Welcome back to another Artist Spotlight. I'm Joe Foy, and today I am joined by Gretchen Koehler. Did I say that right?
You did, you
That's
did.
right. So I just want to get into kind of going over, what you do and where you came from. Just kind of start. Can you start from the very beginning for us? Like, have you always lived in this area? We're in Potsdam currently, filming in a different location today.
Yeah.
So just kind of take me through your life if you don't mind.
Sure, I can do that. Well,
In one month.
it was a sunny day. I'm from Massachusetts. I'm from Western Mass, and when I was in kindergarten, they were offering free violin lessons, and so I apparently a quartet came to my school and played for my kindergarten class, and I brought the flyer home and showed it to my mom, which let her know I was interested, because most of the things were just forgotten after I left school. So I really took to the violin right away, and we started lessons in the Suzuki program, and then very soon after that, my parents took me to a fiddle contest, and because I was in an area where there were lots of contests, and I loved it. I loved the music, so I started. I did my Suzuki violin lessons, and then just down the road from me was a 16-year-old Craig Eastman who played the fiddle, and so I just go over to his house. He'd play me a tune, I'd play it back, and that's how I learned how to fiddle. I did that for a couple of years, and then and sort of had a double life, I have to say. Like, I did the classical things and didn't really tell anybody I was a fiddler. I did the fiddle things, didn't tell anybody I was classical. Because I think back in the day, it wasn't as cool as it is now. Like, it's something you want people to know. Like, I'm so well-rounded. I do all these different styles, and they can interact with each other. But back then, it was more of separate. You did one or you did the other. So so I consider myself a fiddler. I did go to music school. I went to McGill in Montreal and did classical. And again, told no one I was a fiddler. But also on the weekends would go over to friends' houses in Huntingdon, Quebec, and play at the dance parties and stuff. So that's what I did there. And then moved to the North Country. My husband is from here, and I've been here for 25 years, and consider the North Country my home. And
Awesome.
so that's how I ended up here.
So a couple things. Well, can you briefly kind of say what Suzuki is for someone who might not know?
Right. So the Suzuki method, Shunichi Suzuki founded this method where you learn how to play before you learn how to read notes, basically. Whereas it had been done the opposite way. You learn how to read the music, and playing by ear wasn't as important. And so as a youngster, and you start very, very young when you do the Suzuki program. So it really worked very well with fiddling, because fiddling is done completely by ear. And then the classical music I was learning was being done by listening to the music at home and then playing it on your instrument. And then you learn the theory and you learn the note reading. So those styles work very well for me together.
It's kind of like talking before you learn to read.
That's it.
Kind of makes more logical sense sometimes, especially at a young age.
Yeah.
Now I want to go back through. So you said Massachusetts. That's where you, and then you went to school. Were you in Canada?
Yes, at McGill in Montreal.
Okay, that's where. Okay, and then because you mentioned Quebec in there, how did you like being in Canada?
I love it. Yeah. I loved it. Well, and on the weekends when I was a child, again, I'm from Western Mass, but we would travel up to Canada to the fiddle contest. So I spent my summers in Canada. And so when I was looking for a college, I wanted to, I love music education. And so I knew I wanted to go to a music school, and then to have one in Quebec, which is a style of fiddling that I really love. I love French as well. And so it made a lot of sense to go there. So it was a beautiful place for me to develop as a musician. I love Montreal.
Do you speak French?
I wish I spoke better. I love it. I speak poorly, but yeah, I mean, that's not the love about it.
That's right. So then, can you go a little bit more in depth about what you do currently with fiddle? So
I teach fiddling here in the North Country. So I made a choice to pick repertoire for my students that was played here for years and years and years. When I first moved to the area, because I'm from New England, I play a lot of different fiddle styles, and because it's a big melting pot in New England. And so I would have students come to me and they wanted to learn bluegrass, or they wanted to learn Irish, or they had a certain type of music a genre that they liked. And I was like, okay, fine, I can teach all these. And then I realized my students couldn't play with each other. They didn't have a common repertoire. So I made a point of talking to the older fiddlers in this area and saying, what's 5 tunes you think every fiddler player should know? And they were the same tunes I knew. So, but it was really great to collect those tunes. And that's where I start everyone that I teach. I have a studio of about 40 fiddlers, and at any given time. And yes, we learn this core repertoire with the idea that we are going to play together. And then from there, people can stylize. And it's a beautiful thing. I have students that are in preschool. I had a 96-year-old student and who started in her 80s because she finally had time. So, fiddling is for everyone. And that's always my goal, is the community that comes with playing music with other people.
Yep, and I feel like you may kind of half answered this, but why do you feel like it was important to build up to a point of them all being able to perform together?
I think especially in this area that's very rural, we can just have our small pockets and we don't play with other people. So this is something that can bring us together, and that's important. And back in the day, this was such a thriving community of music. There was Don Woodcock tells me he's a good friend of mine, and tells me stories of the dances that they had, the square dances that they had in the Granges, and all of the fiddlers that were in this area. And and it was important for me to help bring that back. It back. And I feel like we have this beautiful community of players. A lot of people, a lot of my students, one person will start in the family, and then before they know it, the whole family is either playing fiddles as well, or playing their guitar that they haven't played in a while, or whatever. That there's nothing that brings me more joy than to hear a whole family playing music together, and neighbors, and so that's my goal, is to get everyone playing together.
I love it. Yeah, that's great. Where do you have the performances?
We do, it started where we were more private. Like we'd gather actually right here in my living room. I bought this house because I saw this space was going to be full of musicians. And so we've had dances here. We've had, we have jams once a month here. And so we did it kind of privately with our small community. And then because they were beginners, a lot of them, and they were a little nervous. But now we go out and we have some regular gigs. We do the Sugaring Off Party every year at the Tawney Center, the Traditional Arts in Upstate New York in Canton, where we celebrate French traditions, and we play music. We teach the audience how to play the spoons. We step dance. We have an actual contra dance with the people there, and my students share. So that's a wonderful event that usually happens in March. And then we celebrate World Fiddle Day. This is in May, a very big day for us fiddlers. So the end of May, and so what we've been doing is I tell everybody that the 10 to 15 tunes that I want everyone to kind of work on, whatever instrument they have, and then we gather and play them together at our World Fiddle Day celebration, which moves around to different locations. So those are our two main events. And then we have smaller smaller concerts throughout the year too. But those, I'd say, are our two main ones to watch out for.
Wow, that's amazing.
Those are fun.
Yeah. I'm going to take it back a little bit, kind of to the beginning, because you mentioned the flyer in kindergarten that you brought home. Now, was anybody else in your family musical at the time?
Well, not at the time. I'm the oldest. I have a younger sister. She was 3 at the time. But the lessons in Suzuki, often a parent learns with you. The idea, like you mentioned, with language, so you're learning from a parent who's teaching it to you. So my mom started some lessons with me, and she joked that I didn't like cleaning my room, so she would say, "Gretchen, it's time to clean your room," and I dash her my violin and say, "I was just in the middle of practicing." So she figured both of the things were going to be good. So I joke that I'm a good fiddle player because I don't like to clean my room. But but my younger sister, being in the house, Becky, heard all the music, and like most younger siblings of my students, just became great at it. She just soaked it in. She was really getting the full experience, and so the two of us play a lot together when we can. She just doesn't live in the North Country with me, but she lives in Texas. But when we can, we perform together, and there's something wonderful about siblings. Our voices really blend well, and we love harmonizing. It's one of my favorite things. So my sister plays.
I'm familiar with that too, because my wife and her sister both play music, and
right.
together they can harmonize really well.
Yeah, I love that.
So when I got here, you mentioned that you've played in the Orchestra of Northern New York. That's why we were talking about you being in Watertown, sometimes at First Pres Church, also in the park, and sometimes. What orchestras are you a part of, or have you been a part of?
Right. Well, so as I mentioned, I play classical music as well as I'm a fiddler. And so I'm in the Orchestra of Northern New York, one of my favorite ensembles, and I play violin in the orchestra, and I've had the pleasure of being a fiddle soloist, and I wrote some music a musical suite for the orchestra with Barb Heller a few years ago, which was
Okay.
a thrill. A thrill. I never thought I'd get to do that. It's just beautiful. So my main classical gig is with the Orchestra of Northern New York. I also have a folk orchestra that I've started. So it's a we're gathering musicians in the area that want to play music. So it's not a jam, so that it's not as loose as a jam. It's not as highly organized as, say, the Orchestra of Northern New York, where you get your printed music and this is what you're going to play and you work on it together. But it's somewhere in between. We have tunes that we do in the fiddle repertoire, but we talk about what we can do as a group, what our strengths are, and we make up the arrangements together. And then we can present it in different ways. We've done it as a concert. We did this last semester, we did a waltz focus. So we had people in the community took some waltz lessons, and then they were able to come to our final event and they danced while we played. So rather than have a concert, we were trying to get the community moving to the music in the way the music was intended. So that's that. And so I've got the Orchestra of Northern New York. I've got the Folk Orchestra of Northern New York. I've got the Madstop Fiddlers. That's Potsdam spelled backwards. That's my group of fiddle-heavy, fiddlers,
Yep.
all ages. And and then I guess those are my main ensembles. I also play as a performer. I play music with a jazz pianist named Daniel Kelly.
Oh, cool.
And so he's from near the city, so we tend to play more downstate, and I love that. So it's nice for me to blend my tradition with jazz as well. And I play with Don Woodcock. We play more traditional music. He's a fiddler in the area, and Barb Heller, who's a guitarist. So smaller ensembles as well.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And you're never fiddled out then.
It's fun. I play all these different styles, so it's really fun to have many different voices. This past 2 years, I've been working on a project called Fiddling with Traditions, and I got a grant through the New York State Council on the Arts. And it started as a suite that I wrote inspired by folk artists. So I went into, it was during the pandemic and I felt very it was nearing the, end of our isolation period, but I felt very uninspired. Music was difficult. We were in our house trying to make music for whatever, social media, and the thought of it was exhausting. And so I needed a way back in. I thought, I want to talk to people about what inspires them, but I don't think I want to talk to musicians. I just can't. So I thought, you know what? I can talk to the creativity that goes into making a quilt, or the creativity that goes into a sweater, or whatever, anything. So I interviewed 8 artists, paper and rug braiding, blacksmithing, silversmithing. I know I'll forget something, but 8. And I watched how they use their hands. I watched the rhythm in their movements. I talked to them again about traditions and creativity, and then through the language that I know is traditional fiddling, I wrote a suite of these tunes to represent each one of those. And from that, I made some music videos. So I played my fiddle in their studio or in their workspace, and then the video shows how they do what they do without any words through the video. And then we were able to put those out, and then I created a stage show. So we have projections behind us, the filming that I did, images that I took, and walk the audience through it. It's very exciting. And then this year my focus is I expanded to food traditions. This really could go on forever. I could fiddling with traditions. It's so fun. And I'm doing it for school kids. So we're tailoring the program to fit into a school assembly. And so I'm very excited about embarking on that project. And the idea being that we're in touch with clothes. We wear clothes every day. We eat every day. We hear music a lot. But I think we've lost touch with how these things came to be. So getting people curious and excited and thinking about why things are the way they are, but through music. And each one of the tunes uses a genre that is played in the North Country. So we've got, traditionally, so there's Irish sounds, there's Scottish, there's old time, there's bluegrass, there's, all these different things are kind of in this suite. So musically it's interesting, and then it's just fascinating to me that I just filmed the ice harvest down in Saranac Lake for my latest piece, the ice harvest. And putting that sawing and that little bit of excitement and danger being out there, and just seeing this community that's carrying on this tradition, is beautiful. So I'm looking forward to presenting that piece too. So
awesome. And now you have some of your pieces then available, that we could link below this.
Sure. The music videos are out. I did 8. I hope to do more. I did 8 for the the project in the beginning, and now I'm working on a CD. We're going to record
Nice.
these tunes, so we will be able to have the collection of them. And there's about 18 to 20 tunes total. That's another project. Is
Awesome.
the recording. But yeah, it's been
so
great.
So the answer is no, you're never fiddled out.
I'm never fiddled out. I love it.
Always
there's
inspired.
It's really, I feel very lucky that I get to express myself in all these different ways.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Yeah, thank you.
Are there any other projects or things that you want to mention?
I think that's it.
Yeah.
Those are the main ones.
What do you, I guess one question, so like your youngest students, what's your youngest student that you've ever had?
Youngest that I've ever had is usually a younger sibling, 2 or 3.
2 or 3.
Because but formally I probably start at like 5. That's kind of a normal time for people to come in. Because again, if they're with their sibling, what I really enjoy is like when the family comes to a lesson and the younger siblings. It's unfortunate to me if they're on electronics, or if they have headphones, they're just not getting it. But if they're there and they're just reading, or they're playing with something, one of the toys that I put out for the kids, some puzzle or something, they're learning so much. And that's what you want to do. This is a tradition to be absorbed. Actually, teaching fiddling is kind of a weird made up role. It would be something that you would have just heard in your home. Like my son learned to fiddle, but I didn't sit down often. I did sometimes, but I didn't sit down often. So we're having our fiddle lesson. It was just, there was people in and out of our house all the time in these jam sessions, and he just got it and he learned it, and that's what you want. So that's the goal. Really.
What do you want to see? What would you love to see in your students like after or years later? What do you want to see them doing with their instrument?
I am so pleased when people keep playing. They just play. They can find people, and I have many students that have gone on to be professional musicians. I have many students that write to me and say thank you so much. It gets me all emotional. They'll say thanks. They're in Colorado, and and they found some fiddlers and they're playing, and they have another in Texas, and she just wrote to me out of the blue just to say, hey, thank you so much for this, because I found some people here and we're really enjoying it. I would just want people to love it. This is music of the people. It's folk music, and just to play for the joy of it, whether it's for your own pleasure or to play with other people. What more could I want? I love that.
I love that too.
Yeah.
I think that's a good place to probably conclude it.
Thank
Go
you.
with that. Well, thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thanks so much.